Today on the River Guide series, we're going to be going from Saxapahaw to Union Bridge. Starting up here at Saxapahaw, we're going to be making our way down to Union Bridge on Greensboro-Chapel Hill Road. You can see the dam and the takeout from the section above, and there's our put-in at the bridge. Just below is the bridge rapid. Saxapahaw Island's on the right, grocery store was on your left, and a Sissipahaw fishing weir is right off the bat there, and a couple more small rapids, and we'll start making our way down through the river. The total run today is about 5.5 miles to Union Bridge. You can go further, another 5.5 miles or so to Chicken Bridge, but today we're just going to go down to Union Bridge. Here is the island rapid at the head of two islands. That'll be the end of the first stretch we look at. And here we are at the mill race at the top, getting to look back up at the structure there on the dam at Saxapahaw. And coming back downstream, there's our put-in. The structure in the background is the community building. Also underneath the building is where Haw River Canoe and Kayak operates out of. They can help you out. So right off the bat, we have the bridge here and a little rapid beforehand, and the bridge rapid, the ubiquitous bridge rapid, is afterwards. And if you haven't noticed, on almost every river and almost every stretch of river, there is a rapid called the bridge rapid. Another thing I've noticed is that on every river there is an island called Goat Island somewhere. Kind of curious and fun. All these rivers have similar names and features. I guess islands are good places to keep goats. So here we are at the bridge rapid, and normally I'll go over here towards the riprap on the river left and run it somewhere. Now the water level today is 2.1 on the Haw River USGS gauge, and that is listed as the minimal, and as we do the run today you can see we'll be scraping by. Now I have run this lower. You can run it lower, but you'll just get a little scrapier the lower you go. At higher water, this run is pretty quick and pretty fast, much like the Glencoe to Red Slide section, similar kinds of features. This river leaves the confines of the city and starts getting out into the rural county side, and what you'll find is it has a very remote feel to it. Very much more, I guess, wildernessy than compared to the last stretches we've been running. This one's more on the par with Brooks Bridge to Altamahaw as far as getting out there and just enjoying nature. There's some development on the banks. The trail here, as you see the people walking, that's the trail on the river left coming from the mill area, and it continues on for about a mile or so down the river. There are a few pastures and a few cutovers that you can see from the riverbank. There are a few little homemade sets of stairs dotted along the way, but very undeveloped, and the reason is because we're leaving the townships and the cities behind and striking out into the countryside here in Alamance County. And that's what gives this run its very rural, very wildernessy feel. The Sissipahaw Indians were the ones who lived in this area, especially up at Saxapahaw. And what you see here is remnants of one of the fishing weirs, where they would capture the fish going through the certain points on the little dams they built with baskets. And that's a neat thing you can see in a lot of rivers in the southeast and probably all over. But this is the first one you'll find on the Haw River Trail that we just crossed through. And here we got a nice little rock garden. At higher water it would be much less technical as the water flows pretty freely through the bigger boulders. But at low flow you have to kind of pick and choose, read the V's and the tongues, and kind of find your route. And here we have Jim, one of my subscribers, is joining me today, and that's what we're focusing on. He's kind of newer to the sport of kayaking, and it's a pleasure to have him out here with me today. I was kind of showing him some tips and techniques getting down the river. This is his first run down this stretch, and it's fun to remember how it was when I did it for the first time. So appreciate you coming along today, Jim, and we had a good time. And the nature of the river begins to change a little bit at Saxapahaw, and if you look at the aerial photo, you can see that that braid going around Saxapahaw Island has a lot of rocks on the right side, and that's just the first example of what's to come a little further downstream. The first real braid in the river is the right channel around Saxapahaw Island up near the put-in. Now on this stretch, the mill race waters the left side pretty continually, and unless it's very high, there's almost no water ever in the right channel. However, down below on the Haw River, on subsequent stretches, that's not the case, and finding a route through the braids can be very challenging. So as you see, this river is much wider here than the stretches above the lake section, and it's very shallow, and you can see that that's going to be coming into play more and more as we get down the river. There's not a lot of depth, but there is a lot of width to this river, and in places where the river necks down or is choked with boulders, all that water comes back together and makes some pretty good rapids. Now, braids usually happen where rivers are extremely wide and shallow, and what the river will do over time is form a lot of micro channels, and sometimes there's visible islands in the middle, sometimes there's not. On the bottom stretches of this river before Jordan Lake, it becomes very braided, and you almost have to pick and choose which route you go. There's not always a good answer because water can just seemingly evaporate out of one channel through some small rocks and is gone. So when I look at this river, I see that that's going to happen. Part of that is because I've already paddled through it, and part of it is I like to watch the geology of a riverbed as I do these longer trips to see how the river changes underneath you. Here's a nice rapid. I think these are the remnants of some sort of ford or bridge in the past. Here we have some cormorants flying up the river. It's kind of a diving bird, fish-eating duck-like bird. These are very common on this stretch. Great blue herons are also very common, but a treat in store for us today, and almost every time I've ever paddled this stretch, are bald eagles. We saw an osprey today, which is another very common sight, and we saw 4 bald eagles, 2 immature and then 2 mature bald eagles. I've seen eagles catch fish, osprey catch fish. I've paddled up on eagles on a rock eating fish. This is just a good stretch for wildlife in general, but if you've never seen a bald eagle, this is almost a guarantee. Now here we are coming into the islands, and you'll see these rock gardens, and then ahead of the boat to the left a little bit, right there ahead of the boat, that's the island. And there's a smaller island on the left, and you can go through any channel. I've camped on the small island on the left, very small, but you can camp there. And you can get around, like I say, right or left. Today we're going to go through the middle channel. And you can go right is the big channel, this is the medium channel, far left is the small channel. Right ahead of my kayak, I hung my hammock on those trees overhanging the river with my son a few years back. We had a good time. Now, since it's below the high water mark on the river, it's actually technically riverbed. Once you move on to bigger islands up on the top, or whether you move on to the mainland and get out of the riverbed, you are on private property, so keep that in mind when you try to do any river camping. Here we are at the end of the island, a nice little rapid. Normally you'll have to run this pretty far to the right unless the water's up. And here we are joining the right channel again at the end of the island. Up ahead, we first saw our eagles today in the trees just out of sight on the river right. Now, as with all these rapids at 2.1 feet, there's no real consequence to going anywhere other than you may drag and come to a stop if you choose the wrong path. So the next step is Eagle Falls, couple bends after the islands, and it's the biggest rapid on the river, on this stretch of river anyway. And then it becomes a nice placid paddle out with gentle sloping right-hand turns until you reach Union Bridge takeout. And there's a rapid just before the takeout to kind of wind the day up. It's nothing crazy, just a nice way to end the paddle. So there goes one of the eagles flying away, if you can just barely see it there on the right hand side of the screen. They were finicky today. Sometimes you can get right up on them. Today we were not able to get too close. Some more beautiful scenery. The bluffs on the right are very tall here. A lot of exposed rock and boulders. And again, you can see the boulders in the river all along the stretch are getting bigger and bigger, which is a sign of things to come. Even after Jordan Lake on the Cape Fear River, the boulders get very big. And the Lillington to Irwin stretch on the Cape Fear is very nice. Here we have a place I call the Slot. Nice little place, you just go right through the rocks there. Again, at higher water, a lot of this is a lot easier actually, because you don't have to try to squeeze your boat down a very small channel like this. At lower water like it is today, the channel you can get your boat through may be just as wide as your boat, so you'll have to pay careful attention. And the challenge is always to try to get through without scraping a rock. Eagle Falls, you want to be about 4 feet off the left of those two rocks. You'll have a nice fluffy little 3-foot waterfall there to go through. And we'll swing it back upstream. Here's another view of the same rapid. You can go through a couple different places, but that has been the best place. There we see Jim making through. Now Jim did exactly what I told him to do. I told him 7 feet off the rocks, but that was just a little too scrapey. And here I'm teaching Jim a little bit about ferrying and catching eddies and peeling out. This is a great place to practice things. As the water level increases, the current here also increases, so at low water today it's a good introduction to getting in some more than normal current that you would find on some of the other sections of river. In stark contrast with these eddies we're sitting in where there's zero current. So we're peeling out and I'm showing him some of the ins and outs of how to do it. And it's a little intimidating on a day where the water's going to be very cold if you flip. But Jim got in there and braved it, did very well. No incidents, and it's a great place to practice some of your skills in current, even if you're a beginning whitewater paddler. It's a nice little rapid to play in. So after practicing and messing around in the outflow of this rapid for about 20 minutes, we were losing daylight. Our afternoon was coming to an end, so we went ahead and did one last peel out and started moving on down the river again. That's the last real feature you'll have until the takeout, where just before there's a nice little rapid. But from here the excitement's over and it's time for a nice little relaxing paddle. That was one of our eagles. There's some nice boulders, some nice rock formations to paddle through. Nothing really crazy, even at high water. A lot of this is just washed out. This is a good run for someone wanting to take it up a little bit. At 2.1 feet, anybody can get down this stretch and have a little excitement, relatively safe. Once you get out past 4 feet on the gauge and above, being the remote nature of this stretch, you'll want to at least go with someone else who is an accomplished paddler and knows the stretch well. Once it gets above 5 feet on the gauge, it can be pretty quick, pretty continuous flow, and most of the rapids are washed out, but there's going to be a long swim before you get to shore if you flip. If you look close, you'll see the eagles in the tree there. We seem to chase these guys down the river until they finally fly upstream. I was almost able to get close enough to this one to get a good look at it. as you see a heron fly across the shot. When I got really close, the eagle actually was out of the picture and flew back over my head, unfortunately. You can see the nature feel of this river really setting in now. And this is the last bend or two. Just ahead will be one rapid and then the bridge. Jim's going to lead out, kind of finish the trip up for us here. Typically you would want to run this rapid on the right. Unfortunately, a tree was down in the bulk of the rapid, so we opted for the center section, the center line, which is also a good option. There you see the bridge. The takeout will be on the left. And I'm coming into it here. Pretty long set of stairs. Not as steep as the Shallowford set of stairs, but a little longer. Definitely be nice to have a friend to help get up this if you have a heavy boat. And as usual, I have a little gear in my boat, so it's not as light as it seems like it should be. There you have it. That's Saxapahaw to Union Bridge. Thanks for watching.